Looking at this poll, it looks like none of us like to do paperwork. Surprise, surprise. We're so glad you could take the time out of your busy day to learn about our software today that improves and automates workflow. We want to tell you about OneQA, but what problems do Biomeds experience? We've got classic manual paperwork problems, too many assets, too little time. Where's that device? Can't even find it in the hospital. Unsure how to set it up and test, what connects to what. Just manual recording of inputs, attaching results to work orders, misplaced records, manager telling you to redo your work. It's frustrating, right? And there's just not enough time in the day for you all to do what you need to do. There is, I'm gonna go to the next slide here. Sorry. Okay, so here we go. So the issues with manual workflow, just the amount of time that we spend on paperwork as a biomed. I mean, 50% of your time is what about everybody estimates. The efficiency loss per employee is about 6.5 hours per week due to changing tools, processes, policies, and then the amount of time it takes to retrain somebody for a new hire, retraining situations, whatever. 8 to 12 months to become proficient, and the retrain, support, office interruptions are definitely challenging. Okay, just go to the next here. Okay, so, sorry. So let's take a look at these typical challenges of budget cuts, maximizing utilization, compliance documentation, lack of standardization. It all comes up in a typical day in a biomed's life. So, Elliot, if you'd want to put your biomed hat back on, let's have a conversation regarding your experience as a hospital biomedical tech.
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so what does a typical day in your shop look like?
Yeah, so typical day in the biomed shop for me was, we'd start around 7 a.m. Everybody would come in, and then usually the on-call person would check the voicemail for the shop phone. Normally the calls that were supposed to go after hours were supposed to go to an emergency pager, but sometimes maybe the ones that weren't emergencies would just go to the shop phone. Around that time, I would usually review my notes and documentation from the previous day, just to make sure that I got all my information from my notebooks or PM procedures or service work documented into the CMS. The way that my shop was configured was half the techs did PM work, then the other half did repairs. So if I was on repairs for the month, I would be working on repairs. So if some stuff came in from like the sterile processing department, or if we had calls that were coming in from the night before, I would go work on that stuff. And then if I was on PMs, I'd get my cart together, and then my equipment, and make sure I had my notebook and my paperwork and my PM procedures, and I would usually just take off, go to the floor to see what PMs I could get done for the day. And then, if I were on call, I think we had like a 7-week schedule. So I would just rotate, or we would rotate a week at a time. And from like 3:30 to 7 in the morning, if you're on call, you were responsible for all that work that needed to be done at that time.
Wow, that sounds like a busy day, a lot of workload to kind of juggle around. When doing the job of a biomed, what kind of challenges do you see?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for most biomeds would probably say this is just not enough time in the day. I mean, you've kind of got to wear a lot of hats. You might be working on, let's say, a PM, right? And then a call comes in and someone needs to go check like a patient monitor or something for a patient room. So you run up there, or you have to go assist somebody with a problem. And then whether you make the repair or it was no issue, you got to go back and work on what you were doing before. So just being able to juggle a lot of stuff, very important part of the job. And then, I would say another challenge would be turnover. I mean, sometimes you have techs relocate for whatever reasons, or they go work for an OEM, or worst case scenario, you lose a good guy that's had 30 years of experience to retirement, and he's leaving with all that knowledge. And then as far as like other challenges, like I would say like time costing challenges, just locating the assets in a hospital. I mean, a lot of this equipment might supposed to be in like one area. That's not always the case, and you've got to track that stuff down. And then hopefully this doesn't happen too often for most people, but since we did a lot of manual documentation, sometimes you misplace that notebook, and you've got to go find it, or maybe it's not doesn't take too long, but you still have to find it and make sure that all that documentation is in that CMMS, because as we all know, if it's not in the CMMS, it's the work's really never been done. So
Yeah, that makes sense. So how do those challenges affect you?
I would say, like with you've got the guys that leave that have been around for so long, they're leaving with a lot of knowledge, and if you're a tech that doesn't have that much experience, your shop is pretty it doesn't have a lot of guys with a lot of experience, you're kind of losing a lot of knowledge with those guys that have been around for a long time. And they might be very familiar with some of that older equipment that doesn't get touched as much. And like you might lose one of those guys. Could be a mentor, someone that you kind of always went to for questions or training, or just like they have so much knowledge, you might just go to for them. And then with turnover and stuff, training a new is always a challenge, because it's not necessarily that they're hard to train, it's that you've got other things that you're supposed to be doing. You still have to get your job done. So getting them up to speed, I think they say it takes sometimes 8 to 12 months, and that's still not going to get some complete speed probably. So that's kind of how those challenges affected me.
Yeah, that sounds really frustrating. So moving in a different direction, I mean, how do you document?
Yeah, so when I worked at the hospital, we didn't we use like I just use like a pen and paper. So I had my notebook with me if I needed to do a PM, or maybe a service procedure. Usually I'd have to print that stuff off and take it to the floor with me, and then document in my notebook. And then at the end of the day, I would transfer all that information over to the CMS, down in the shop. So I'd try to, allocate some time at the end of the day, but it's not always the most easy thing to do, just because of, not having the most time, all the time that you need in a day.
Really? That sounds old school. What kind of
Yeah.
reports do you generate?
Um, we didn't really generate too many reports as biomeds. I would say the only ones we really generated were, I would need to generate a report to see what PMs, um, you know, I had left for the month, or maybe like some service work orders that I had that I need to finish by the end of the month. And then we'd also, obviously generate one for the whole shop, so that we just kind of knew, exactly what we had open and needed to be closed up by the end of the month or the week or whatever. And that usually came from the CMMS platform. That's where we generated our reports.
Wow. So that's a typical story in the day of a biomed. So moving on to we were talking about typical challenges, the budget cuts, maximizing utilization, compliance documentation, lack of standardization, and that all goes into what we're going to look at as far as how OneQA works. So OneQA, it's been designed to be a biomed's best friend. So Elliot, let's have you be a product specialist now. Would you show our audience what OneQA looks like and how it works for us?
Definitely. So OneQA's launches from your desktop. I have mine right here on my desktop, so I would just double click this. Typically, they was to bring me into a login page where you just put in your email address and password, which is designated to you. And then I usually click remember me so that I don't have to do that every time. But this is going to be your home page. So this is what you'll see when you log in every time. So we have our assets here. We've got about 15. I would say about 12 here. Let's take a look at one of them. So this is a Zoll R series, which I'm sure plenty of you are familiar with. We are able to put in our asset ID, our serial number, make, model, preventative maintenance dates, so we know that when this equipment is due for PM, which also is reflected right here where we see red. So this is actually due. Got a little bit of work to do this month. And then our description, which is gonna, I would use this part of OneQA is to kind of put where that asset is in the hospital, because most hospitals have a lot of different, or a lot of the same device. So we might have 30 defibs. This one's going to be designated for that third floor. And then I'd like to put a picture in here of the asset, just so that maybe someone that's not as familiar with the Zoll R series can see it. You could also just put a picture in of actually where that is located in the hospital, so that you can always you can see exactly where it is. Oh, it's on a cart by the third floor entrance of that building. So that's something that I would do. And then within each asset, we can kind of see the activity for that asset. So we can see, every time procedure was ran, or we updated the asset ID, or when we disconnected and connected it. Everything's in there, so it's great for like regulatory purposes, or having just like a record of anything that's happened to that asset within your within OneQA. And then we have the results tab, which is going to show all the procedures. So you can see that I've done 15 procedures. Green check marks mean pass, and red meaning fail. So that's the list of all the procedures that I've done with this. And so I know I mentioned this red status. If we go back and look at the assets here, we've got the red and green here, and yellow. So green means the asset's good to go. It's not due for PM. Yellow is it's due, this month, and then red is overdue. So it's nice to just have that right there, so you can just fly through this and look to see, what's due, what's not for the month, or what's overdue. And I know this asset list is pretty small right now. I'm sure a lot of you have thousands of assets at your hospital, and it's very easy to upload that from your CMMS. Each CMMS gives you the ability to take an equipment list and export it. So you can take that list. We kind of make just a couple of quick changes to it, and really what it is we're just moving certain columns into certain areas it needs to be moved into on the spreadsheet, and then we import it. And it's very fast. We've got customers that have imported thousands of devices very easy and seamlessly. So now that we've looked at assets, let's look at our procedures. So OneQA comes with 50 preloaded procedures. We have a lot in here. We've got patient monitors, ventilators, infusion pumps, all sorts of stuff, ultrasound. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with either the LifePak 15, the LifePak 30, the Zoll R, the Zoll X, and the Zoll M. Those are all in here pre-built right out of the manual. And so I want to just show you these procedures. One thing that I like to point out is up here we can see our connected devices. So we have our Fluke connected devices to the software, and in here we can see we have the ESA 615 and the Impulse 7000. We also have a log, so it shows the calibration dates and the serial numbers, and that's very important for just tracking and you know, just your maintenance. It's very important to have that information. So let's take a look at this document. So we have a lot of instructions in here. They're from the manual. A lot of the pass fail, you know, physical inspection stuff that you're all very familiar with. That's great, but I want to show you how to edit these documents, because I know some of you are probably on alternative maintenance programs where you're not necessarily doing everything that you know that's in the service manual of you know, your defib or whatever device you're working with. So I just want to show you how easy it is to edit and make changes to these procedures. So let's come in and let's look at let's just look at this question here. Or sorry, this one. Confirm that all cables are free of cracks, cuts, exposed, broken wires. So, you know, just by clicking the pencil, we're able to edit this. But we want to edit. Let's just add a description. So I know when I talked about, you know, having that senior tech or someone that's very familiar with this equipment, they can come in here and add pictures and tips and tricks and notes, so that, you know, the guy that's not as experienced with that equipment, he can have all that knowledge, and the guy that, you know, put these notes in, he can continue on his normal job. So, you know, I'm going to come in here and just make some notes as the senior biomed. So check connections here. I want to highlight certain areas that I want him to check. So I've taken a picture and added, you know, areas that I want the team to check. So, you know, I want them to check here, here, and here, because, you know, those are areas that get played around with a lot. They get bent. So I'm just making notes. And if, you know, if this is, let's say, you know, we don't do confirm that the Zoll battery is fully charged. Obviously you do that. But if you didn't, you come in here and click delete. And if a part of your alternative maintenance program says you don't need to do that step, you click delete and it's gone. What you would do is you would click save. I'm not going to click save because this is just, you know, for the demo. But when you click save, what ends up happening is the administrator, meaning, you know, the manager, director, senior tech, kind of whoever's ever been put in charge of the procedures, he's gonna or she's gonna approve that. And then what's gonna happen is the next time somebody logs into the OneQA for your organization, they're all gonna have standardized procedures. So like that's one of the big things about OneQA is it's constant standardization of procedures. You know, the automation, which we're going to get into, is great, but the standardization is huge. It's a big part of biomed nowadays. So let's get into the procedure or the asset itself. Now, one thing I always like to make sure that I say is, you know, we look at these devices that I have in here, and I only have, let's say, 6 different pieces of equipment. But OneQA is used for, you can use this for every device, every device in the hospital, every sort of procedure. So let's look at, I want to show you guys the automation. So let's look at the electrical testing. This would be safety testing for a defib. So we link that procedure to our asset. So we're in the asset. We put in our work order ID, and we either put that in manually, or if we have integration, which can be set up, that'll pull right from the CMMS. So we've got information that's important, like our asset, serial number, the test device information, the asset ID. All right, so let's start the test. So carefully inspect the defib and connected devices, pass. Okay, now we're going into the earth leakage current. This is a test you're all familiar with. So this just gives us kind of a step-by-step instructions of what's going on. We can put in high limits, low limits. Sure, we're all following pretty much the same limits. So we're passing these. Okay, now this is another test you're all familiar with. Now you can see that this is just kind of flying through, and that's great. But as we all know, we don't have a software out there that's gonna just tap into a defib and start charging up and discharging. So when you do this test, you will be pressing charge and discharge. That's just a safety feature. I don't think any of us want the ability to just go in there and automatically do that from a software. And then this last test is going to be the charge time test. So I'm clicking play, and it's counting the time that it takes that device to charge, because we have, limits. I have some pretty big limits here, 13 seconds to 2. But we can change all that. All that information can be edited. It's very easy, and just standardize it across the organization. So last test is check printer functionality, and that's a pass. So we're done with this procedure. We've passed everything. Everything looks good. And now we're gonna hop into the data tab. So the data tab is gonna have all the information or all the testing that you've done within OneQA listed here in the results. So this, again, great for regulatory, just having copies of your information and documentation. Let's take a look at the one we just completed. Okay, so this is the one that we just completed. Everything's passed, check marks. If we wanted to export this, we go into export as PDF. And we just export it to the desktop. I'm not going to, because I already have a copy of one that I did today. Here's a copy of the procedure. So it's, it's all completed. If you didn't want, some people don't like to have they just want the important stuff on this document, and that's great. Within OneQA, it comes with a PDF editor where we can come in here and edit, so we can, remove this, because you don't need that probably you're looking at just the results. If you wanted to put, your hospital organization up here, we could add that too, put it in a corner or kind of wherever you'd like it, so that it's just specific to your organization, all your documentation. We can also export it through to an Excel raw data, which a lot of hospitals like that also. And then I'm going to get into probably one of my most favorite parts of OneQA is this run tab. So as you all know, you're all biomeds. Sometimes you're working on something, you got to take off, right? Something breaks, so we need to go check that out. We can go into this run tab, and the run tab keeps all the information that we've done, earlier in the day or earlier in the week or whatever it's been, so that when we have time to go back to that procedure, all we have to do is find it. Okay, that's right, I was working on a scale this morning. All right, so I'm going to come in here and click play. We've got all the information. We're back to where we started, so you don't lose anything. It's great for just time savings and everything. And then when we finish this procedure, we can actually have our administrator, like our manager, he can lock all this information, so that once it's completed, you're completed for the you can't open it up or edit it or anything. So OneQA is great for that too, just that legality and compliance. So that's essentially OneQA, very basic. And I'm going to hand it back off to Terry.
Well, thank you for a great demo, Elliot. It was really cool to see how that OneQA automated that defib test. They look like they could be really long. As you can see, everyone, OneQA is a Fluke Health Solutions workflow automation software platform designed to assist biomeds manage their workflow without any bottlenecks. OneQA does a few things. It standardizes testing, increases the accuracy, it increases the efficiency, and it's all basically by following a recipe in a cookbook, right? So it decreases errors and missteps. You can import your OEM device service manual directly into the procedure itself. You can embed device picture and notes like Elliot showed, and the location of that device as well. It adds a Biomed onboarding tool for taking care of the new hires, making sure they've got all their stuff straight and doing things just like a tenured Biomed would do. And like Elliot also said, it gives manager the administrative control of that procedural content so that it can't be tweaked down the chain. So while OneQA automates PMs performed with Fluke testing equipment, remember, it is a complete procedure library for all biomedical devices. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look into some of our customer testimonials and see what they've said about using our OneQA software. So got a few hospitals up there I may or may not recognize. Brian Health, they've loved the way it adjusts test equipment, automates everything. WVU, very intuitive tool. Just a few things that they said, big thing, time savings at USL Medical. So they save 50% of the time using OneQA. It's an ISO RST Synexus. They've saved the test time it takes to go from 45 minutes down to 6. Big OEM like Philips, they appreciate the partnership, which is ongoing with us, and OneQA team on the integration and onboarding efforts. It's been really good. So I would like to thank everyone so much for joining us today. I hope we were able to show you what OneQA can do for Biomed. We're going to ask if anyone has any questions at this time, and I'm kick it over to Dan for Q&A.
Great, thank you, Terry. Thank you, Elliot. That was a great presentation of OneQA and what a great tool it could be for your team. We did get some questions. The first one I'd like to, Elliot did touch on it a little bit, but maybe we could go into a little more detail. But it was about the equipment list. Can you import the equipment list from the CMMS and into OneQA? So that integration on being able to import and export.
Hey everyone, this is Kiran Jaglinki. Dan, thanks for that question. Again, thanks everyone for your time. That's a great question because we want to make sure we reduce any kind of redundant work, right? And as we said, we designed OneQA as a Biomed best friend. So we do have some capabilities on OneQA itself where you can actually import your asset list as a CSV file. That can be done. And we also have our APIs, open APIs that can talk with your CMMS partners, your CMMS vendors. And depending upon how deep you want that integration, we would be able to get a one direction or a bi-directional flow, meaning you can have your CMMS to push the assets onto OneQA. And if you want to get that back to CMMS, even that can be done. So we have the platform built in a way that can really help your workflow and make sure it really saves time. It really helps your Biomed techs.
Great, thank you, Kiran. And we're getting quite a few questions coming in now. So thank you for being active out there, and we'll just start going through them one by one here. Another one, can you go through a little bit more detail on how to connect your test equipment to OneQA?
I think Elliot has listed out a good demo. Could we get a little more specific in terms of what exactly you're looking for on how, when you talk about conduct the test equipment?
Just the connections, how
the connections.
How it
Okay, all right.
I can probably take this one if you want, Kieran.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the connection to OneQA is very simple. So you have your Fluke testing device. There's plenty of them that work with OneQA. They connect through just a normal USB plug. So you really the only addition you're doing to your workflow is you're taking a USB cable and plugging it into your Fluke device, and then you're just running that to your computer. So that's really as simple as it is. And then you obviously have your computer with you too. But as far as connections to the devices, that's all it is.
Great, thank you, Elliot. Another one is about IT privileges and how on the installation process of OneQA, what kind of privileges do I need from my IT department?
Sure. As Elliot explained before, so it's OneQA is a desktop application. It is supported on the Windows operating system. We do support versions 8.1 and 10. We have specific system requirements right from RAM. You need at least 4 GB. And from a IT security requirements, there are a few links that have to be whitelisted. We can reach out to you if you can ping us. We can send you those details and make sure you guys can download OneQA and try it out.
Great, thank you. And then I had a question about, I want to see if I'm reading this correctly. We gave an example of, building procedures. Can OneQA work for other instruments in the hospital? So other equipment, whether it's utilizing our analyzers or Kieran, can you
yeah, absolutely.
take that one on?
Yeah, sure. So as you have seen, as Elliot was demonstrating the procedure administration capabilities, the platform is flexible. You can bring in any procedure manual. You can bring in any test procedure. Those questions would be configured. Those questions can be standardized. If you're working with the Fluke test equipment, you would get the advantage of the test automation, meaning when you run, you click on the run button and the OneQA would respect or would recognize the readings and it gets passed on to it automatically. But if you're using another test equipment, you'll have to enter those values manually. You're still eliminating the usage of a paper, you're typing in, but you would kind of miss on the test automation. Hope that answers your question.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm just sorting through some of these questions. We have a lot of questions from the crowd, so thank you so much for your participation. We're getting some questions regarding answer. And so it sounds like we have some answer and med tester users out there. So can you reflect on the difference between answer and med tester for OneQA?
Sure. We kind of think about OneQA as answer 2.0. What answer does is the test automation, which is onboarded onto the equipment. OneQA is a cloud-based solution which brings in extreme flexibility in terms of how easy it is for you to manage your test procedures. And OneQA is the platform for on the go for all the modalities that we have in front of us, and also the new ones that we are bringing in. So it's all about what you get from answer, and it's more because we have the roadmap filled in with the modalities that we are working on. So for this year, we are actively working on to bring in ProSim. We are actively working on to support our radiation X2 devices. So OneQA is our answer 2.0.
Great, thank you, Kieran. Yeah, we're getting some questions on the type of devices OneQA could run on, like a tablet, a laptop, even a smartphone. Can you add a little clarity on that?
Yep, absolutely. Today, OneQA runs on our Windows machines. So as long as it is a Windows operating system, that is 8.1 or 10, you can run it. And the closest for a tablet form factor would be your Surface notebooks from Microsoft. So those are your modular Windows machines. We are also actively investigating to take OneQA on the other form factors. And as we are looking into it, the procedure library or the test procedures are massive, and we are more and more learning that the form factor also gets into place. If we are actually getting into the mobility place, we would be definitely supporting the tablet interface, because that's how you get the best UX. I don't think we'll be looking into smartphones, but that is being actively investigated. But as of now, it's a Windows application, and the mobility would be, you can accomplish that mobility piece if you're working on a Surface.
Great, thank you, Kieran. And then another question about procedures, and they're asking if multiple users can edit the same procedure, and can you give a little color on that as well? That'd be great.
Sure thing. We have, Elliot did bring up the concept of an administrator, approver. We have different user roles that are set up on OneQA. Now, depending on how your Biomed shop is set up, how your Biomed group is set up, we can define who would have controls in bringing in the changes, who should be approving it, and who should be just consuming it. So as a user, I would never be able to do any kind of changes, but with the upgraded permissions, I might be able to bring in the changes, but I can add an approval layer so that I'm gonna bring in the change, but it has to go through the approval process before it gets out to all the users. So to answer the question, yes, multiple users do get the opportunity to edit the procedures, but that can be controlled based on the user roles you assign to your group.
Great, thank you, Kieran.
Sure.
Then there's, sorry, I'm just going through. Can we talk a little bit more about the CMMS integrations that we currently have?
Absolutely. As we said before, we have open APIs. What it means is our application, our platform can talk with the other platforms. In our case, our CMMS vendors. We have some active integration work that we're doing with Nuvolo, TrueAsset, TMS. So if you're using a specific CMMS vendor and you want to have the systems to be connected, we have a framework. We have our open API documentation. We can work with you. We can work with the CMMS partner, and we can bring in the custom integration depending upon how deep you want to go. Right? It could be as simple as a CMMS system uploading and pushing the work orders assets to OneQA, and we just push a completed report back to the CMMS, or just identify the data points that you want to map, and we feed in the results back to CMMS so that you can get your reporting. Hope that answered your question, and we are here for any further questions on the CMMS or the integration setup.
Great, thank you, Kieran. And then I had another question about the maximum number of users that can log into OneQA.
That's a great question. Now it all depends on how you're setting up your account on OneQA. We kind of look at how your shop is set up, how your group is set up, and we look at the concurrent licenses. So if you have 10 Biomed techs and you're working in 2 shifts and 5 for each group or 5 for each shift, you would be looking at 5 licenses, because we're gonna price our seats by the concurrent licenses. If you have 10 techs and you have 1 shift, you're looking at 10 licenses. So again, there's no limit on the number of users you want to bring in, right? You can still make sure, as long as you have your team working at different shifts, you can still get that 1 seat as long as it is not concurrent. You can have those 10 users logged in. But if you have your group that works at the same time, you might be looking at increasing the concurrent licenses.
Great, thank you. Kieran?
Sure.
I guess most importantly, I did have a question. Where can we get the software OneQA?
That's a very important question. So, Dan, I think would you be able to push a link to the group? The flukebioMedical.com that we see on the website is a great place to go. But we can also push the link where we could you guys can go and we have a 30 days trial period, and that's where we can actually go and get the software.
Great, thank you, Kieran. I think someone beat me to it. One other question we had was, and I think it was answered in the chat, but maybe we could talk a little bit more about the actual connection to OneQA through USB.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you connect from your laptop to the device that you're running?
That is correct. That is correct. So you got the Fluke test equipment, could be a ESA that is connected to the medical equipment, your asset, and then you connect the ESA or a defib analyzer via a USB cable to the computer. Dan, if you could actually, I think it's one of those slides we have as a setup. No, but you're kind of connecting the computer to the Fluke test device and then to the medical equipment.
Perfect, thank you. And I had another question about OneQA. We did talk a little bit about which test equipment it supported. Is it just Fluke or is it RaySafe as well?
So Fluke and RaySafe are all part of our bigger Fluke Health Solutions group. RaySafe is that caters to our radiology friends. This year, we are actively investing in supporting X2 to begin with. So we would be supporting X2 for this year.
Great, thank you, Kieran.
Sure.
Well, we have a lot of great questions coming in, and I'm also going to add in the chat an email for Kieran. So if your questions do not get answered, we apologize. I'm going through all of them as fast as I can and trying to address all of them. But if we do not get to them, please reach out to Kieran and we'll get your questions addressed. I have some questions regarding wireless connection. You mentioned the USB, but is there a way to switch to wireless?
That's part of our mobility investigation. The first step here would be supporting the other form factors that would be tablets, which would still be supported by cable connections. When it gets into the actual TrueBlue wireless support, we are still investigating the possibilities, the things that would work and would not. It's too early to comment, but we do have under our radar, and it's in the feasibility study to see if it is possible, technically feasible, and is it viable.
Great, thank you, Kieran. I think we're winding down here. There was a question earlier about using OneQA offline. Do I need to be connected to the internet all the time, or can I use it not connected?
Well, OneQA is designed and developed for offline usage. The way we built it is you have this application that gets installed on your computer, and it gets its information from the cloud. So we have the cloud set up. Now you would need to log in for the first time. It downloads the information from the cloud, all the assets and all, and gets stored on your application. Now, on the go, as you saw Elliot running his tests, he wouldn't need an internet connection to run those tests. All that he needs is get his computer connected to the test equipment and thereby the medical device, run his test. If he's connected, those results would get uploaded to the cloud. If not, they're still on the computer, on the application, and whenever he has his network back, the results get uploaded to the cloud, and that's another backup, right? So down the line, if you break your computer or if you have any issues with your computer, you still have a backup on the cloud.